Good evening. My name is Clint Schroeder. I'm the president and executive publisher for the Hagedon Media and Hagedon newspaper groups. On behalf of the Joint Public Policy Committee representing the Coeur d'Alene Regional, Hayden, Post Falls, and Rathdrum Chambers of Commerce, in partnership with the Coeur d'Alene Post Falls Press, welcome to the 2024 Town Hall Candidate Forums. These forums provide a unique opportunity to connect with the candidates who seek to serve our community. Tonight's events will be hosted by two esteemed business leaders, Hilo Hancock, CEO of Beacon Clinic, and Tyrell Stevenson, Legislative Director of the Coeur d'Alene Tribe. This year, our moderators will sit down with each candidate to discuss several of the most pressing issues in Kootenai County. By meeting with our candidates one-on-one in a more casual environment, we aim to provide our voters with a better understanding of each candidate's point of view.
Well, next we have the pleasure of speaking with the incumbent and the challenger candidates for State Senate District 5. We have with us tonight incumbent Senator Carl Bjerke. Thanks for coming by tonight.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. If you wouldn't mind, take a minute and explain to the voters here in Kootenai County and in particularly District 5 why you're running for re-election.
Well, my life's been about service. I am the incumbent, your current senator for District 5. Just got done with the 67th legislative session. It's in two parts over 2 years. So we finished up the second part. I've been involved in leadership and politics a good portion of my life. People ask me all the time at this point, why are you doing this? And I said, it's because I continue to want to serve. In Boise, I'm on committees, health and welfare, and also the Joint Finance Appropriation Committee. So those are two committees that are quite involved. I'm the vice chair of the Senate Finance Committee, and so we handled the budget. And that's a lot to talk about, and I don't have a minute, but I'm looking forward to continuing the work that I've already started into the 68th legislative session.
All right, thanks. Well, speaking of the session that just ended,
yes.
Could you tell us one good thing that came out of that session, as well as one not so good thing from your perspective?
A good thing for me, being on the Finance Committee and the vice chair, we made some pretty big changes to how we do the budget. Idaho's got a great process for doing the budget. It's somewhat the envy, I believe, of a lot of other states. But this year we made a kind of a tweak to it. It's been about 57 years since we've had any really demonstrable change in how we go about doing that budget. And what we did is we broke out the budgets into a maintenance budget separate from what would be the line item or the agency asks portion of the budget. That's a good thing. It's provided some more accountability and transparency to the budget process. Negative, it's a little bit harder to come up with that for me. I'm so engrossed in the process of being on health and welfare and JFAC. It starts early in the morning and goes late into the evening. I just felt a sense of heaviness. It was a little bit more difficult this half of the session. Don't know exactly. One of those things where you can feel like the tension, you can kind of cut it with a knife sometimes, and you can't quite pinpoint it. I don't know if it had to do with inner political issues within the caucus or, between the Senate and the House, but a lot of it might have something to do also with the change in the budget process. So although that was what I consider a positive thing, I think maybe there was some angst and maybe some folks that didn't feel that maybe that was the best pursuit, and which might have caused some peripheral kind of, upheaval, so to speak. So it's the best thing on one side, but then maybe the negative, all wrapped up in the changes that we made with the budget process.
Makes sense. Um, how would you assess the relationship between the governor's office and the legislature? And how do you see yourself making that relationship as effective as possible?
I see that relationship as our founders have designed it. There's an executive, there's a legislative, and there's judicial, and we all have a place and a role. Again, this budget process kind of proved out to be us exerting our control as a legislature. We are the ones that appropriate. It's our constitutional responsibility to have a balanced budget in Idaho. And I think to a certain extent, and I understand it from a leadership perspective, if I'm the governor of a state, I look at myself as the person in charge. That might not be a completely welcome change. But I also believe that there's a certain element of friction that happens in politics, and it happens in national politics, and it happens in state politics and local, that you do have to kind of rub things the wrong way every once in a while, that you can't just all kind of be walking in lockstep in the same direction, because we don't seek difficulty and change if we do that. I see. I had an opportunity to have a photo op with Senator Melissa Wintrow over a bill that we passed, and it was just, to me, a nice culmination of standing there with the governor and a senator that I supported a bill that she had moved forward, and I supported, wholeheartedly, and that we were able to have a bipartisan meeting and a picture taking with the governor. I think it's important to know that we're all part of a process. We need to respect each other's positions. And if we really care about the state and politics, we will put aside personal differences to work together for the betterment and the future of Idaho.
All right, thanks. Well, as you mentioned, you're on the Joint Finance and Appropriation Committee, so you spend a lot of time with the numbers. If you had to put a grade on the job that the legislature did in funding public education, what grade would that be?
That's an interesting one, because I support public schools. My wife's on a school board here in CDA 271. She supports public schools as well. There's a part of me that feels that, we also have a constitutional requirement to provide for public schools, a free, common, nothing's free, right? It's that's the biggest misnomer. But my grade, if you look at what we did in House Bill 1 and the special session, what we did with 292 and what we've just done with 521, we've had at least about a 3-year history of what I consider to be pretty good funding efforts towards public education. I think it was a 16.4 increase for the first half of the 67th legislative session. And of course, we made some drastic changes again this time, through 521. I can't look at that and say that we haven't done good things for funding for education. It would be really hard for someone to convince me that in this 3-year period of time between the special session and these two halves of the session, where we've given what I see as unprecedented amount of money to public education, you would have a hard time convincing me that we didn't get at least a B or B plus or an A. How that goes moving forward, we'll see. I know that it's still something that a lot of folks feel isn't appropriately funded. There's obviously people talking about levies again. 521 provides a lot of money to help out through facilities maintenance and some of those issues. My hope is that whatever we do when it comes to funding public education is that we hold them accountable, especially with results. But at the same time, we'll keep working on it.
Education funding is top of mind, and it's going to be for a while. It's a very important issue to a lot of folks.
Yes.
But we really appreciate you coming down and talking to the voters of District 5. If you wouldn't mind taking just a minute and offer any final thoughts you might have about the legislature in this race.
Just that I'm looking forward to. A lot of people ask, "Are you really going to do this again?" I go, "No. It's an extension of a life of service. It's important for me to get back in there and continue to fight for all Idahoans. It's not a glamorous position to be on JFAC, and health and welfare has its issues as well. But I'm there to legislate, and I'm there to govern. And hopefully what I've shown in this 2-year period in the 67th legislative session, that I'm a reasonable person whose votes prove that I have the best for Idaho in mind. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to go down there once again. And I'd be asking for that vote. It'd be kind of silly if I didn't at this point, but I appreciate the opportunity to come down here and chit chat and allow voters to see a little bit more about what I've done and what I hope to do in the future. And I appreciate the time.
Oh, we appreciate it too. Thank you very much for coming down.
Thank you.
Well, I would now like to welcome Cheri, the second candidate for State Senate, District 5. She's here with us this evening. And thank you, Cheri, for being here. And why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself to the voters of Kootenai County and explain why you're running for District 5 Senate seat.
Well, thank you for having me. I've been a resident of Kootenai County for 35 years, and I've seen a lot of changes. And I've also seen things happen that make me feel like now that I'm retired, I should be stepping up and doing a little bit more to help our community and our kids. And right now, I think that we need to actually have some competition in our primaries. And so I'm running as an option for voters in the primary for a seat, Legislative District 5. And I think that I can do a good job, and I think that I want to give the voters of Kootenai County the opportunity to decide if I can do a good job and send me to office.
Very good. Well, we're going to start with our first question, Cheri, and you'll have 2 minutes to respond. From your view, what was one positive thing that came out of the last legislative session? And what was one negative thing that came out of the last session? And explain to us why.
Well, the positive view is that we did make some more strides towards funding our public education. And Governor Little has been a strong advocate for helping us improve our infrastructure for the state as well as in public education. So I was really glad to see that come out of the legislature. And the other thing that bothered me was sometimes our legislature enacted some laws that really infringe upon individual responsibility and took away local control. And I won't mention any specific legislation, but you can find out what that legislation was. That kind of bothered me a bit if you go to my website. So I don't like it when people take away our individual responsibilities and tell us how we should be doing things. And so that was my one thing that I'll talk about that was negative.
Okay, thank you. The second question we have for you is, how would you assess the relationship down in Boise between the governor's office and the legislature? And if you were elected, what would you do to make that the most effective it could be for the citizens of Idaho?
Well, the primary responsibility of our legislatures is actually to take care of the budget. And it's not up to the governor to take care of the budget. He will indicate some of his priorities to us, but it is up to the legislatures to actually take a look at the budget, take a look at the needs, and critically assess that. And JFAC is the committee that is responsible for what I call the big grunt work. And so our legislatures are supposed to handle that, because that handles what government does for us. And if they do their job and they present it to the governor, then the budget gets passed and things are allowed to function smoothly. But if they quibble over a lot of different things in the budget, the governor doesn't have any control over that. So the governor doesn't control the legislature. The legislature controls the budget, and they have to work together to get that taken care of so that the governor can then execute his responsibilities, because he's responsible for helping us to execute the laws and that they legislate. They can make laws. That's what legislatures do, legislate. They make laws, but the laws that they make should be designed to help Idaho, not just special interest groups, but all of Idahoans. And so they work together, but they both work in their own lanes. So.
Okay, thank you. So the final question we have is a bit more specific, and you actually touched on it. It involves public education, and you're going to put your teacher hat on for just a second in some ways, and we want you to grade how the legislature is done with funding public education in Idaho. So give us a grade and explain the score you give the legislature.
Well, in the past, I wouldn't give them a passing grade. So I'm not going to say it's an F or a D, maybe a C minus. And that's what their past performance has been. And public education is a foundation of a great nation. Our education is the foundation of a great nation, and public education is our responsibility as members of our state to make sure that our kids are adequately educated. And our legislature has not done a good job in making it clear who's responsible for what. And bonds and levies are what I'm going to digress into, because the legislature decided to fund only a certain amount of our public education, and then let a little federal dollars come in, and then let the community decide how to fund the rest. But they made it to where if the community doesn't fund it, then we lose like 25% or more of the dollars necessary to run an organization. And that's not a way to actually do business. And so our current system creates too much quibbling over our responsibilities, because people don't understand our responsibilities. And so when you have a bond or a levy, bonds are for buildings, levies are for maintenance and operation. And you give people this responsibility, and the people don't really understand how it's their actual obligation. They think that it's an ask and that it's not an obligation. And so they go at it and they argue about it, and they cut funding, which is a morale. It really cuts the morale for the people. And so I'm not happy with how they handle that aspect.
Okay. Well, thank you. And that was the last of our 3 long questions, or longer segment questions. And now, Cheri, you'll have an opportunity to share any final thoughts you have about your candidacy or what you would like the voters to know here and why they should vote for you. And you'll have a minute to do that.
1 minute. That's not fair. All right. Folks, I've been here for a while. I've seen the changes, and I would like to have an opportunity to work for you, because I really think that legislatures should listen to their people and try to do the best that they can do with the information that their people are giving them from their community, and bring their wishes to Boise and to work on laws that will help the people of their communities. That's what I believe a legislature should do. I also don't like it that when you contact your legislature, as I've done many times, and they never get back to you. And I thought that, we're small enough that we should be able to actually hear back from our legislature if we actually send them any sort of requests or let them know how we feel about certain laws. And so I want to be that person for you, where you can contact me and I can work for you to make Idaho a great place, because it already is. We just can make it better.
And you said you had a website.
I do.
Would you like to share your website with
Yes.
the voters?
It's cherizao.com. So CHERIZAO.com. And so you can find out my legislative priorities, where I wrote a letter to Governor Little about something I didn't like that he did. Things along that line about who I am and stuff. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share my website. But I'm kind of excited.
Well, good. And
Yeah.
we're excited that you joined us this evening and shared about the things you're passionate about, shared reasons why you're running and where you're at on your issues. So thank you, Cheri. We appreciate you coming, and best of luck to you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks again to all the candidates who participated tonight. A very special thank you to our moderators, Hilo Hancock and Tyrell Stevenson, for their excellent questions and moderation. Your dedication to our community is admirable. I'd also like to thank the members of my team at the Hagedon Media Group and the Coeur d'Alene Press. Special thanks to the team at Quicksilver Studios. And thanks to all of you who took the time to watch. This year's 5 primary election town hall candidate forums allowed us to become more familiar with the 13 Kootenai County local race candidates. We sincerely thank those candidates who took the time to discuss what's important to county voters. We at the Hagedon Media Group take the job of providing voters with the most relevant candidate information very seriously. We hope this town hall forum has helped inform those still uncertain about whom they will cast that final vote for in the coming weeks. Along with these forums, you can find our comprehensive voter's guide at www.cdapress.com. Most importantly, don't forget to vote. It's one of the most important and powerful rights and responsibilities we have as Americans. Thank you, and good night.